When it comes to bending wood, no matter what way you go about it, there's a lot of setup involved. You've got to bend the wood around something. And my something of choice is usually an MDF form. And I have a very specialized ability to procrastinate this step. I hate working with MDF. So I enlisted the help of my friend Mark just down the street. And we use his CNC to cut these parts out. Work smarter, not harder. Not mean? I'm going to try a little steam bending on this, which requires air-dried lumber, and you can't buy that at a store. So I went to one of the dopest backyard urban mills, owned by a nice guy named David here at Milwaukee Hardwoods, as well as my buddy Mark, different Mark, from Windwood Milling. Fun fact, he's a professional flautist. Or maybe he's an oboenist, one of those woodwinds. Anyway, shout out to those three guys for getting this project off to an easy start. First step here is to turn all of these slabs into boards. And to do that, we're going to take all these nasty live edges off. I don't know who would keep those on. That was a joke. Please don't cancel me. For this project, I really wanted to test the two ways to bend wood. One being bent lamination, which you've seen on this channel quite a bit. And the other is sort of the OG wood bending technique, which is steam bending. Aside from the obvious, steam bending requires one thing that is very different from anything else I've done, and that is air-dried wood. Steam bending uses the power of water and heat to make the fibers of the wood malleable. Most commercial lumber, however, is dried in a vacuum kiln. Now, this is great because it kills bugs and makes the wood very dry, but there's almost a crust that forms around the outside. It's sort of like toast. If you try to get toast wet again, it doesn't turn back into bread. Similarly, if you try to steam kiln-dried lumber, it's a lot harder to make bend. This is all just what I've read. I've never actually steam bent before, so consider us learning together on this one. In order to keep things straight, there's two projects today. The first is a floor lamp, which is steam bent. And the second project for comparison will be a library ladder using vacuum formed bent lamination, which is thin layers stacked on one another and glued over a form. And while I get these laminations prepped and ready for glue up, let me tell you about this week's sponsor, Lucy. Here's a random fact about me. I don't drink alcohol. And one I'm not particularly proud of. I started chewing in high school, which sounds bad, but it was pretty common in Idaho. After school, playing Mortal Kombat in my buddy's basement, chewing long cut, skull vanilla, and cope straight. Really disgusting habit. Later in life, a college roommate introduced me to snus, back when you had to import it from Sweden, but the sad, dry little nicotine pouches weren't for me. When I finally decided to make the healthy choice of finding an alternative, but wasn't ready to give up the part of chewing I love, nicotine, for focus, creativity, for relaxation, even while working my wood. It came out weird, but I'm going to roll with it. For many reasons, millions of adults choose to use nicotine, but we know not all nicotine products are the same, and none compare to Juicy Lucy Breakers, the only naturally derived and tobacco-free pure nicotine pouch. But here's the kicker. Lucy Breakers contain tiny capsules that break open to unleash a juicy flavor party in your mouth, like mint, mango, berry, even espresso. Other pouches can't even compare. Trust me, I've tried them all. To my fellow hermit homies out there, no more trips to the corner store. You continue to not need to leave your house, because shipping's always free. Whether you use nicotine while working, creating, or playing, Lucy Breakers are the intelligent choice. Get $10 off your first order at lucy.co when you use promo code Sawyer at checkout. That's lucy.co, using the link in the description to receive $10 off. And did I mention free shipping? And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Thanks, Lucy, for supporting today's build. Now let's see how those laminations came out, and then we can get steamy. A few of you were asking why I don't do the whoosh sound out of the bag anymore, and it's really because this new polyurethane bag just sort of sounds like a sad duck queef instead of like that deep, boisterous, satisfying, cheek-slapping resonance of the vinyl bag. So to those of you who missed that, I do too, and I'm sorry. All right, why the hell am I putting dye in a plastic water bottle? Well, there's a few different options for steam generation. And somebody asked me what this is called, and I didn't want to sound like a smartass, but I don't really know how else to say steam generator. I'll have a link down in the description below, but it was really kind of hard to see what the level was, and I kept overfilling it, and then it bubbles over, and then you get burned. Anyway, it was a whole dang thing. So I found coloring the water really helped. I thought it was absolutely crazy that it actually got boiling hot inside this box. If I did anything different next time with the box, I would probably put some insulation around the outside. Over the 4-hour bake, It heated up the shop quite a bit, which tells me there's some more efficiency that could be had. I'd probably also direct the water towards the exit hole so it didn't all come pouring out of the front door when I opened it. All right, $1 million idea. And hear me out, because this is going to sound crazy, like socks, but for your hands. Can you imagine the possibilities? Wouldn't just be for wood bending either. You could use them for grilling or baking. I don't know. Real opportunity there, guys. Somebody jump on that. Once out of the box, these boiling hot boards are brought back to room temperature while clamped to the forms that we made in the beginning of the video on the CNC. We'll call them something crazy like mitts. Now, I cheated a little and used the vacuum press until they were cool, and then I pulled the pair out and clamped them to one another and allowed them to reach relative humidity equilibrium with the shop over the course of about 2 weeks. Ooh, that one was a little better. I'm here for it. All right, moment of truth. Are they going to stay bent exactly as they came off the form? You know, I think they did. Compared to the bent lamination though, I think they're a little like wigglier, not as stable, which sort of makes sense when you're laminating a bunch of pieces together with glue. I kind of expect that to be more stable than steaming. Now that I have the bent verticals for both the lamp and the library ladder together, I can move on to making the legs. And these dang things really kicked my butt. They're multiple pieces. All of the grain needs to line up. They're curved, they're carved, and where they join to those upright verticals is going to be a curved compounding angle, which looked pretty simple in CAD, but in reality, not so much. I'm going to get a bumper sticker that says that. Using templates that I printed off from the model that I designed this from, I can just transfer the rough shapes onto some boards, get one flat face as a reference surface. And while I'm here, we might as well clean up the laminations and steam bent pieces. Compared to these dead, straight, flat, super accurate bent laminations, I was really surprised about how out of straight the steam bent ones ended up. So much wood movement. CNCs kind of get a bad rap in some crowds from woodworking, probably just because they're not accessible to the general audience, but this is where one would be nice. Roughing out the shapes and then bringing everything in by hand. I got better stuff to do with my time, guys. But I don't have one, so if there's any CNC manufacturers listening, let's talk. Since the lamp really doesn't hold as much weight and it's not as critical as the ladder, I decided to make both legs out of the same piece of wood just by resawing it in half thickness-wise, which was actually the original plan with the ladder, but it's such a critical part of the piece that I really wanted a lot of beef there to just maintain stability and make sure nobody fell to their death. All right, the rule is to never cut your curves before you cut your joinery, but can't have a Sawyer design build without using a little of this PantoRouter action. Since the PantoRouter references off of that front edge, which is the straight edge of the tenon, I was comfortable taking out the rough shape, and we'll worry about honing that into its final look after we get everything joined together. That little nubbin that I'm cutting right now, that's the tenon. In terms of the birds and the bees, this is the male part of a join. And now we can cut the female part on the other half of the legs. You really have to chop a few of these by hand to appreciate how easy this makes mortise and tenon joinery. So this machine actually has really good dust collection, but I think it looks freaking cool on camera at slow motion, so I usually leave the dust boot off, which is silly, I know, but it's really for you all. You're welcome. Like a toy. Oof. So nice. Now, these don't really match up in thickness because everything's going to get a little bit of curve added by way of hand plane and power carving. We'll get to that here in a minute. For the lamp, I decided that probably dominoes would be fine. I don't honestly remember why I didn't just do this on the PantoRouter while I was there, but same idea, but the 10 ends floating between the two. For some reason, I saw antlers in these the entire time I was building it. This seemed important to share. All right, favorite part of the build, when it starts looking like the model. This keystone will tie the uprights together with the forward part going, you know what I mean. And this is really where shit begins to hit the fan. I was working off my model, but with all of these compounding curves, it's really difficult to work off of those measurements at this point because everything compounding till now really may not add up to what's on the model. And this compounding curved angle where the legs meet the uprights is a perfect example of how that can go wrong. I got it the first time, I mocked it up, and somehow it ended up like 9 degrees off. So I just put some towels in, glued that offcut back on, waited for it to dry, and recut the joint. And for whatever reason, my track saw always needs to cut an 1/8 inch deeper, but nothing a hand plane can't clean up. All's well that ends well. If you're into woodworking, chances are you've heard the name Sam Maloof. He's got a pretty legendary rocking chair, and I noticed that in studying that build, he uses a lot of screws. I know there's at least one person out there that will see screws in this and be furiously typing about the heresy. But you know what? Sometimes a screw is the right tool for the job. And yes, that is what she said. But with all these funky angles, I really just didn't have any better way to get a clamp around these. So by combination of screw to clamp and backing that up with dowels, I think this has a pretty good chance of withstanding the test of time. Now, if you remember, we cut the angles on the legs using a straight edge, basically, with the track saw. But that joint of the leg to the upright is curved. So by dropping one screw in, I'm able to transfer that curve over to the face of the leg and just take that in by hand. It's kind of a tricky operation because one swipe too many and you end up with a gap. So I'm careful to take this slow and really sneak up on the fit there. And with that fit, we can move into shaping the legs and getting those all glued together. You know, this is just really shaping up nicely. We've had almost zero problems, and that's definitely not foreshadowing. Or is it? Nah, I wouldn't do you dirty like that. Or would I? Then it's really a rinse, lather, and repeat for the lamp, and we can go ahead and get everything glued together. Somebody asked in the comments the other day if I was using epoxy instead of wood glue because I had a bunch of gaps I needed to fill in my joinery. So I'd like to take y'all way back in time, where legend has it that in the early days, before it was used to mimic bodies of water between slabs of wood, epoxy was originally used, brace yourself, as an adhesive. Crazy, right? What determines what glue I use and when I use it is typically open time, and normal wood glue will swell the joint, making it a more difficult joint to make, especially if your joinery is tight. So I'll use something that's not water-based, like epoxy. It also gives you a much longer open time, which is sort of handy if you're fighting against the clock. And if you like little tidbits like that, I've had a lot of people sign up. I am almost ready to put plans out. If you want to get on the notification list for that, the link is down in the description. And I'm really excited for you guys to see them. On that note, if you aren't already and you found something useful so far, I'd really love if you considered subscribing. And seriously, thanks so much. I'm so grateful for all of you spending your time watching these videos. It means a lot, and I really strive to make them informative or at very least entertaining for you. All right, every ladder has rungs. This one is no exception to that. I was going to integrate the steps into the sides, but I think that doing sort of a support underneath each rung is going to be a really stout way to support a person. They seem just kind of blocky to me, so I used one of my favorite little tricks on the joiner by just setting it to full depth, and it sort of scallops out a nice little recessed area. It also makes for a nice little detail. Since these supports are set on the same plane as the verticals, putting a step on top of that would make the step facing up into the sky. So I just took the top and bottom edge off at an angle so that they fit level with the floor. And once those are profiled, we're ready for steps, and then it's really just shaping, profiling, flushing everything as glue dries and it comes out of clamps. In order to figure out the final shape of the steps, I really need to finish up the verticals. And it looks like that keystone is dry. So I'm going to go ahead and flush that up, get it cleaned up, and get some stretchers fit. Then we can see where the steps land. I found myself trying to find some way to trim all of these up with a power tool. This is a great case for when a few passes with a sharp carcass saw make quick work of the task at hand. Hand tools rule. I mean, power tools do too. Tools rule. All right, before assembly starts, and now that these legs are dry, I'm going to get the shape and the transition sort of smoothed out. This is achieved with a combination of hand plane and sander. I think one of the easiest ways to elevate a piece is attention to grain direction. With how smoothly the grain flows from one part to another, that pickiness really pays off right about now. All right, excuse the ADD, but I feel like we've been neglecting the lamp a little bit. And those steps are going to be tricky, so I'm totally not procrastinating those at all as we move back to the top section of the lamp. And like the keystone in the steps, it joins the top of the two bendy bits, but then it cantilevers over the piece and puts some separation between the light and sort of the fixture. That angled dado makes for a nice join. For the back, I'll just put some dowels in. And now that those curves are fixed in place, just like with the ladder, I'll go ahead and get the legs fit to the curves. The lamp's a little different in that there's two legs for one vertical, but other than that, pretty much same. Looking lampy. I like it. In order to finalize that join, a few dowels are inserted through the vertical into the leg. After spending a few minutes getting all of my plane irons stupid sharp, the final surface finish is brought in by hand. Now the recess for the light fixture can be made in the end of the piece, and a groove is made to house the wiring. I've had a few requests lately from people wanting to see some tips and tricks on sharpening. There's a lot of great info out there, but if you want to hear it from me, let me know down in the comments. I do read all of those. I try to respond to all of them as well. And I can definitely add that to Patreon or something. Maybe a video course on setting up hand tools to work your wood. That one sounds like it might belong on OnlyFans though. All right. While that dries, and with nothing else to procrastinate on, let's figure out the steps for the library ladder. First, we need to marry the rung supports to the verticals and get this entire assembly ready for glue. Then, each of the steps is just a little bit oversized, and this was designed intentionally so that I could notch out and sort of nest each step into the verticals. In order to determine the placement of that notch, I need to get the rungs and the steps joined together. To do that, just some threaded inserts with machine screws. That'll make for a pretty beefy and reliable connection. Then it's just transferring that angle over to the step and the assembly is ready for glue. While that dries, I'll go ahead and get that notch cut out. With so many curves and angles and transferring it from a piece of paper to a 3D object that's not really assembled, I have to be super careful not to get turned around. But one lesson it seems that I refuse to learn is dry fitting. You can't fit that in from the top, and I cut the dang angles backwards. Damn it. That old notch nesting tight fit thing was stupid anyways. So I picked a new profile and I think that'll look great. I'll get those tightened down and test time. For some reason, this part scared me a little bit. What if I miss something? This all comes crumbling down to the ground. I'm an engineer. Did I do this right? Should I be testing this in a library? Oh, hey, that actually feels pretty good. Never doubted it for a second. I've always said the hardest part of woodworking is the order of operations. Mostly because if you miss a step and have to go back, or it prevents you from completing another step, it's not only costly money, but usually costly in time as well, which can be a little bit demoralizing on a project that's already taken 3 months to get to this point. I thought about starting over on the steps, but the path to get there was just too much. And after taking a little bit of a profile with a gigantic thumbnail bit on the router, I'm actually really pleased with where this unscheduled stop brought me. I also found a technique that I really would like to try on a future project, and that's hand checkering. The crisscross pattern you see on the grips of really nice rifles and shotguns. I don't know much about it, but I do know it is a learned skill, and I've seen some really bad attempts at it. I'll lock that idea away in my old sawdust spank bank for a future project. Might be a fun technique to share with the world too. Since everyone always asks, for this project, I am using a hard wax oil mix that is linked in the description. I chose it because I don't spray in the winter, and this one's an easy one to apply. While the first coat cures, I can go ahead and sort out the wiring for the lamp. The light was pretty low profile, but it still needed a little bit of clearance up top, so I just made a little cap and soldered the wires together, placed the wires in a groove, and trimmed that groove out with a thin strip of walnut. And to control the light, I decided to use a smart dimmer plug that I found on Amazon. And with that, let there be light. Dope, right? All right, I just wanted to take a second to give one more thank you to all of you for watching. I really appreciate you guys. This means a ton to me. Now let's check out those beauty shots. Overall, I'm really pleased with how both projects came together. The figuring in that air-dried walnut is absolutely stunning. I'm pleased with how the joinery came together, as difficult as it was, with all of... I'm honestly kind of proud of how this turned out. Proportions, presence, I'm just digging all of it. And I'm confident that both pieces will stand the test of time. That lamp may need a bent laminated wood shade though. As far as steam versus lamb, I'm pretty comfortable with bent lamination, and I like the precision and reliability off of the form, but I think some of the inconsistencies in steam were due to my setup, so jury's still out there. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, I think you might enjoy this build next. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.